All right, greetings from the Dark Continent. Conscious Caracal here, or Adams Van Sale, here to shine a light on the goings on down south. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Just had some problems here with my microphone. It keeps automatically changing the sound level from where I want it to where it thinks it should be. It's really behaving itself like an ANC cadre, not allowing people to just make decisions for themselves, as they always know best. So, good evening. It's been an interesting past 2 weeks in South Africa. I still need to get a proper recharge. It's been a lot of hard work, especially now in the past 24 hours with Donald Trump shining that light, that very bright light here on what's happening in South Africa. But sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I'm very glad that we were blessed with another Trump post, another truth, as you call it. Unfortunately, for everyone that's very curious about my feedback regarding expropriation without compensation and Trump's tweet and what's going on in South Africa, I'm not going to be covering that tonight. I've been working on that topic. I've been working with that topic for the past 2 weeks. Tonight's stream is particularly just what I always do when I reach a milestone on this channel. Then I read one of my favorite essays or texts. Tonight we're celebrating 200 episodes of Stream of Consciousness, and that's what I'm going to be doing. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be answering questions about current events in South Africa. If you're interested about that, just go to my X profile, Caracal, and you'll find all you need. You'll be satisfied with all the information you need about what's happening in South Africa currently, but we're not going to be talking about that tonight. I see here Zach Delden Ekblom says, hello CC, the day after tomorrow I will have been a subscriber for a year. Time flies by. Well, yes, it absolutely does. Thank you. Thank you very much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Sideline Opinion says, kind regards from Africa, the continent where you have to go back to the basics. Absolutely. RT Panday says, good evening all. Good evening, RT. And then Jose De Silva says, congratulations on your excellent interview yesterday. Thank you very much. That interview is doing very well. I mean, it's uploaded here on my channel. It has 10,000 views here already. The interview was also uploaded on Newsroom Africa's YouTube channel. I don't know exactly how many views it has there at this time. Let's quickly check before we get into the essay here. So that was my interview with Stephen Quotas about the expropriation bill. It'll be easy to find it here on Newsroom Africa because the thumbnail is just a big picture of my face. So I just have to. There we go. It's got 101,000 views already. Wow, that's fantastic. Wow, excellent. Very good to see. Good evening. Hope you're all having a great evening, says RJ. Well, I hope you're also having a great evening, RJ. Violence is life, says Age of Aquarius dawns. RJ says, except Stephen Quotas, may his conscience bother him. Absolutely. I hope it keeps him awake at night. Me, I sleep like a baby, knowing that I'm on the side of righteousness, on the side of right, against a government that's trying to destroy private property rights in this country. All right. But tonight, it's not about that, even though it might be a little bit of a plot twist. Everyone thought I would be talking about expropriation without compensation. But you only get one chance to celebrate your 200th episode. If I were to talk about expropriation without compensation tonight, that would be my 200th episode. And that would break tradition on this channel. So, what will we be reading tonight as part of the 200th episode celebration? It will be Complex Systems Won't Survive the Competence Crisis by Harold Robertson. I think I'll put it on the screen. I don't want you to just stare at my face throughout the entire show. I don't think that's going to be adequate. So let's see here. Let's just say share screen. As always, be patient with me while I look for the screen. Here we go. Share. All right. Can you guys, let's see. Can you see the text there? Perfect. Perfect. That is, let's see. That's even better. All right. Let's see here. All right. Violence is Life says 200. Congrats. Well, thank you very much. I love doing this. So there's definitely going to be 200 more. Grasshopper says, Adams, you really did give Stephen an intellectual clobbering. Well done. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Stefan Jakob says, the faces Stephen made really sent me. The feigned outrage and holier than thou attitude. Yeah, well, I said I wouldn't talk about expropriation without compensation. And we've already spent the first 5 minutes talking about it. All right. So tonight, what are we reading? We are reading this essay by Harold Robertson called Complex Systems Won't Survive the Competence Crisis. And I think it just keeps getting more relevant as time goes on. This is a piece from 2023, so it's 2 years old. And we're going to start reading now. At a casual glance, the recent cascades of American disasters might seem unrelated. In a span of fewer than 6 months in 2017, 3 US naval warships experienced 3 separate collisions, resulting in 17 deaths. A year later, power lines owned by PG&E started a wildfire that killed 85 people. The pipeline carrying almost half the East Coast gasoline shut down due to a ransomware attack, and almost 500,000 intermodal containers sat on cargo ships unable to dock at Los Angeles ports. A train carrying thousands of tons of hazardous and flammable chemicals derailed near East Palestine, Idaho. Air traffic control cleared a FedEx plane to land on a runway occupied by a Southwest plane preparing to take off. Eye drops contaminated with antibiotic-resistant bacteria killed 4 and blinded 14. While disasters like these are often front-page news, the broader connection between the disasters barely elicits any mention. America must be understood as a system of interwoven systems. The healthcare system sends a bill to a patient using the postal system, and that patient uses the mobile phone system to pay the bill with a credit card issued by the banking system. All these systems must be assumed to work for anyone to make even simple decisions. But the failure of one system has cascading consequences for all the adjacent systems. As a consequence of escalating rates of failure, America's complex systems are slowly collapsing. So I think you guys are already starting to catch on why I think this piece is so relevant, even though it was written 2 years ago. I think we're still seeing a lot of the reactions or a lot of the same symptoms in regards to complex systems being under increasing stress all across the Western world. In South Africa, it's not even controversial anymore. We have had 18 years of rolling blackouts because the South African government cannot figure out coal power generation, a 200-year-old technology. But now they want to adopt AI, a 2025 technology. Yeah. At the same time, I mean, our rail network. So Robertson starts off his piece talking about all the complex networks that make America America. And now you think about South Africa. Our rail network is gone. It's almost non-existent. The other day, when me and my wife were driving down to Cape Town from Pretoria, we saw a freight train next to the road driving, and we both reacted like we saw Bigfoot. We reacted like we saw a cryptid, because I think just a few months before, my wife had asked me, when's the last time, do you remember the last time you saw a freight train? I thought, no, I really can't remember when the last time was that I saw a functioning freight train. So there's the one network. The cell phone network in South Africa is still woefully ill-equipped to cover large portions of the country. The internet service provider landscape is still incredibly inadequate, and the South African government adds insult to injury by blocking Starlink in South Africa based on its race-mad policy. So there's another network that can be improved, but it's not being improved. The postal service in South Africa is a total disaster. I mean, I always tell people when they want to send me something from abroad, please don't use the South African postal service. I will not receive the package. I can tell you now, if you send it through the South African post office, I will not receive it. And so on and so forth. I mean, the electricity grid is also under major stress. So in America, we're seeing this South Africanization. We're seeing the complex systems starting to fail. In South Africa, many of them have already failed. So let's continue. The core issue is that the changing political mores have established the systematic promotion of the unqualified and sidelining of the competent. This has continually weakened our society's ability to manage modern systems. At its inception, it represented a break from the trend of the 1920s to the 1960s, when the direct meritocratic evaluation of competence became the norm across vast swaths of American society. In the first decade of the 20th century, the idea that individuals should be systematically evaluated and selected based on their ability rather than wealth, class, or political connections led to significant changes in selection techniques at all levels of American society. The Scholastic Aptitude Test, SAT, revolutionized college admissions by allowing elite universities to find and recruit talented students from beyond the boarding schools of New England. Following the adoption of the SAT aptitude tests, such as the Wonderlic 1936, Graduate Record Examination 1936, Army General Classification Test 1941, and Law School Admission Test 1948, swept the United States. Spurred on by the demands of two world wars, the system of institutional management electrified the Tennessee Valley, created the first atom bomb, invented the transistor, and put a man on the moon. By the 1960s, the systematic selection for competence came into direct conflict with the political imperatives of the civil rights movement. During the period from 1961 to 1972, a series of Supreme Court rulings, executive orders, and laws, most critically, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, put meritocracy and the new political imperative of protected group diversity on a collision course. Administrative law judges have accepted statistically observable disparities in outcomes between groups as prima facie evidence of illegal discrimination. The result has been clear. Anytime meritocracy and diversity come into direct conflict, diversity must take priority. Now, I know a very large portion of my audience are South Africans. So the microphone, I'm sorry, the microphone did that thing again where it automatically changed the volume. I'm sorry if some people struggle to hear me there. I hope it's fixed now. In South Africa, this idea sounds very familiar. The South African government's agenda of transformationism really pretty much boils down to the same thing. It doesn't value. It's doing it again. I mean, I'll figure it out. I just want to lock it in so it doesn't keep changing automatically. The levels here. We'll see. I'm not going to fight with the technology tonight. So when it comes to specifically what's happening in South Africa, what has happened in South Africa over the decades, it has been the sacrificing of meritocracy on the altar of transformationism. And transformationism is the ideology of the ANC, which states that all facets of society need to be perfect demographic mirrors of the population at large, which pretty much boils down to mandated racial discrimination and racial bean counting. All sports teams, corporate offices, boardrooms, you name it, parliament, everything needs to be like this perfect racial representation of society. It really is social engineering on an extreme level. Emery says, "Hey, Adams, bit late to the party today. Congratulations on 200 episodes. I wish you many more." Thank you very much, Emery, our friend there from Turkey. Sideliner Opinion says, in the wild, survival of the fittest ensures progress. In modern humanity, equality and inclusiveness prevents progress. Right, let's continue. By the 1960s, we did read that. The resulting norms have steadily eroded institutional competency, causing America's complex systems to fail with increasing regularity. In the language of a systems theorist, by decreasing the competency of the actors within the system, formerly stable systems have begun to experience normal accidents at a state that is faster than the system can adapt. The prognosis is harsh but clear. Either selection for competence will return or America will experience devolution to more primitive forms of civilization and loss of geopolitical power. De-evolution. That was the word. I think What's the difference between the again, here's my English second language striking. You spell devolution of power differently, right? No, devolution. Okay, so devolution and de-evolution, you pronounce the same. Cool. I always you guys have seen me live learn new English, new new English words and new spelling rules and improving my English. Emery says devolution and de-evolution. All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, what was that word? Someone once used a new word in my chat, and I never heard that word before. And now it's like software downloaded onto my brain. Domicile. I don't know what a domicile was, and then you guys explained it to me. Now it's part of my vocabulary. All right. So let's just read that last sentence again. I think it's so important. The prognosis is harsh but clear. Either selection for competence will return, or America will experience devolution to more primitive forms of civilization and loss of geopolitical power. Also, on a technical note, as I said, my microphone has a mind of its own. It's adjusting. It's wait a minute. I think I just had like a little epiphany. No, I don't think that's gonna work. Settings maybe. Audio. Yes, automatically adjust mic. Let's see what happens when I untick that. 1 second. I think I've just figured it out. 1 second. Sorry, guys. I'm not a tech wizard. Yeah, see, it's doing it again. All right. Let's see if it works now. If my volume is not ideal, let me know, and I will. No, it's still doing it. That's fine. I'll figure it out on another evening. RJ says, the more you know. Yes, absolutely. So let's go on. From I've been speaking so much Afrikaans today as well that my English still needs to catch up. From meritocracy to diversity. The first domino to fall as civil rights era policies took effect was the quantitative evaluation of competency by employers using straightforward cognitive batteries. While some tests are still legally used in hiring today, several high-profile enforcement actions against employers caused a wholesale change in the tools customarily usable by employers to screen for ability. After the early 1970s, employers responded by shifting from directly testing for ability to using the next best thing, a degree from a highly selective university. By pushing the selection challenge to the college admissions office, selective employers did two things. They reduced their risk of lawsuits, and they turned the US college application process into a high-stakes war of all against all. Admission to Harvard would be a golden ticket to join the professional managerial class, while mere admission to a state school could mean a struggle to remain in the middle class. And this is also how the universities became the incubation chambers for the cathedral, or for the state ideology, the progressive secular religion that we see have seen rule over America now. Some people call it wokeness. I don't really like that term. It's a slang term. I don't feel like a serious person when I use a slang term like that. This outsourcing did not stave off the ideological change for long. Within the system of political imperative, now dominant in all major US organizations, diversity must be prioritized even if there is a price in competency. The definition of diversity varies by industry and geography. In elite universities, diversity means Black, Indigenous, or Hispanic. In California, Indian women are diverse, but Indian men are not. When selecting corporate board members, diversity means anyone who is not a straight white male. The legally protected and politically enforced nature of this imperative renders an open dialogue nearly impossible. However, diversity itself is defined, most policy on the matter is based on a simple premise. Since all groups are identical in talent, any unbiased process must produce the same group proportions as the general population. That's transformationism. That's the ideology of the ANC. And therefore, processes that produce disproportionate outcomes must be biased. Prestigious journals like Harvard Business Review are the first to summarize and parrot these views, which then flow down to reporting by mass media organizations like Bloomberg Businessweek. Soon it joins McKinsey's best practices list and becomes initiated in corporate policies. Unlike accounting policies, which emanate from the Financial Accounting Standards Board and are then implemented by chief financial officers, the diversity push emanates inside of organizations from multiple power centers, each of which joins in for independent reasons. CEOs push for diversity policies primarily to please board members and increase their status. Human resources, HR professionals push diversity policies primarily to avoid anti-discrimination lawsuits. Business development teams push diversity to win additional business from a diversity-sensitive clients, e.g. government agencies. Employee research groups, ERGs, such as the Black Googler Network, push diversity to help their in-group in hiring and promotion decisions. All right, let's see what the chat's saying before we continue with this piece. Kale Rocks, nice to see you, says just his eyes. Switch off noise suppression. That's maybe it. Let's see if that works. I'm just curious at this point. Thank you very much. Let's see. Settings, audio. That's not enabled at the moment. So it's something on my PC or on my laptop. I'll check after the show. I'm not going to bore you guys with just looking at me struggle. Bobby Gnosis says, half of Los Angeles is now a third world city. The crumbling roads are repaved uneven. The wildfires were largely arson and could have been quelled. Instead, they prioritize struggle sessions. Vehement says, morning. Good evening. Slippery Pickle says, it's a mystery religion. Cannot tell what the hell gender they are. It's a mystery. North Seas says, good day. Let's see. Sideline Opinion says, the further man removes himself from the laws of nature through social engineering, the lesser his chances of survival will become. Nature does not promote weakness or weak leaders. I'm Nick Plur says, it's all anti-white. Emery says, which software are you using? I'm using my Windows and I'm using StreamYard. I don't know if it's StreamYard or Windows that's doing it. I'll keep putting my my microphone level at 100 and then it automatically shifts it back to like 80 or 85. So it doesn't completely destroy the stream, but at the same time, it is annoying. Right. Did we finish that one? Yes. Diversity in theory and practice. In police academies around the country, new recruits are taught to apply an escalation of force algorithm with non-compliant subjects. Ask, tell, make. The idea behind ask, tell, make is to apply the least amount of force necessary to achieve the desired level of compliance. This is the means by which police power, which is ultimately backed by significant coercive force, can maintain an appearance of voluntary compliance and soft-handedness. Similarly, the power centers inside Similarly, the power centers inside U.S. institutions apply a variant of ask, tell, make to achieve diversity in their respective organizations. The first tactics for implementing diversity imperatives are the ask tactics. These simply ask all the members of the organization to end bias. At this stage, the policies seem so reasonable and fair that there will rarely be much pushback. But best practices such as slating guidelines are a common tool at this stage. Slating guidelines require that every hiring process must include a certain number and type of diverse candidates for every job opening. Sounds like South Africa. Structured interviews are another best practice that requires interviewers to stick with a script to minimize the chances of uncovering commonalities between the interviewer and interviewee that might introduce bias. Often, HR will become involved in the hiring process, specifically asking the hiring manager to defend their choice not to hire a diverse candidate. Because the wrong answer could result in shaming, loss of advancement opportunities, or even termination, the hiring manager can often be persuaded to prioritize diversity over competence. Within specialized professional services companies, senior level recruiting will occasionally result in a resume collection where not a single diverse candidate meets the minimum specifications of the job. This is a terrible outcome for the hiring manager as it attracts negative attention from HR. At this point, firms will often retain an executive search agency that focuses on exclusively diverse candidates. When that does not result in sufficient diversity, roles will often have their requirements diluted to increase the pool of diverse candidates. Again, in South Africa, this has been common practice, especially with racially discriminatory policies like BEE and triple BEE. Zanula Buskachni says, really hope South Africa can turn this tide in my timeline for the betterment of my newborn children. Well, organizations like AfriForum are fighting to turn the tide, so you're in good hands there. Matthew Dixon says, hello, people. Hello, Matthew. Nice to see you tuning in here. Again, as we approach the half-hour mark, we are celebrating 200 episodes of a Stream of Consciousness here tonight. And as I always do when I reach a milestone, I celebrate it by reading one of my favorite texts or essays discussing it with you. And that's what we're doing here tonight. And apologies if any of you are curious about the Expropriation Act and Trump's tweets in South Africa. I'm not going to be touching on those topics. It's going to derail the conversation. I will be appearing on Oren McIntyre's show tomorrow night at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's 10 o'clock in South Africa. And I will be talking to him specifically about the Expropriation Act and South Africa, so you can look forward to that. Petra Meiberg says, Nant Arends, Nant Petra. Emery says, hiring agencies are a huge issue, though. That way of hiring never leads to good hires. All right, let's continue. For example, within hedge funds, the ideal entry-level candidate might be an experienced former investment banker who went to a top MBA program. This preferred pedigree sets a minimum bar for both competence and work ethic. This first-pass filter enormously winnows. I'm assuming that's a synonym for like narrows. That's another new word that I don't know. Winnows the field of underrepresented candidates. To relax requirements for diversity's sake, this will be diluted in various ways. First, the work experience might be stripped. Next, the role gets offered to MBA interns. Finally, fresh undergraduates are hired into the analyst role. Dilution works not just because of the larger field of candidates it allows for, but also because the Harvard admission officer of 2019 is even more focused on certain kinds of diversity than the Harvard admission officer of 2011 was. This dilution is not costless. Fewer data points result in a wider range of outcomes and increase the risk of a bad hire. And all bad hires are costly, but bad hires that are diverse are even worse. The risk of a wrongful termination lawsuit either draws out the termination process for diverse hires or results in the risk of a wrongful termination lawsuit either draws out the termination process for diverse hires or results in the firm adjusting by giving them harmless busy work until they leave of their own volition. Either way, a terrible outcome for the organization which hired them. If these ask tactics do not achieve enough diversity, the next step in the escalation is to attach carrots and sticks to directly tell decision makers to increase the diversity of the organization. This is the point at which the goals of diversity and competence truly begin to displaying significant tension between each other. The first step is the implementation of key performance indicators, KPI, linked to diversity for all managers. Diversity KPIs are a tool to embarrass leaders and teams that are not meeting their diversity targets. Given that most organizations are hierarchical and pyramidal, combined with the fact that America was much whiter 50 years ago than it was today, it is unsurprising that senior leadership teams are less diverse than America as a whole, and more pertinently, than their own junior teams. The combination of a pyramid-shaped org chart and a senior leadership team where white men make up 80% or more of the team means that the imposition of an aggressive KPI sends a message to the layer below them. No white man in middle management will likely ever see a promotion as long as they remain in the organization. This is never expressed verbally. Rather, in South Africa, it is expressed verbally. That's the messed up reality. In Just a few years ago, an internal memo from one of the largest pharmacy uh, companies in South Africa leaked, and the internal memo pretty much said that we are going to have to freeze all hiring and promotion of white people because we are not reaching the government's racial quotas, and because we are at risk of serious fines. All right, let's continue. Rather, those overlooked figure it out as they are passed over continually for less competent but more diverse colleagues. The result is demoralization, disengagement, and over time, departure. While all the aforementioned techniques fall into the broad category of affirmative action, they primarily result in slightly tilting the scale towards diverse candidates. The next step is simply holding different groups to different standards, as happens in South Africa with our 141 race laws on the books. Within academia, the recently filed Students for Fair Admissions versus President and Fellows of Harvard College lawsuit leveraged data to show the extent to which Harvard penalizes Asian and white applicants to help Black and Hispanic applicants. The US system, despite formally being forbidden from practicing affirmative action by Proposition 209, uses a tool called comprehensive admission to accomplish the same goal. The latest technique, which was recently brought to light, shows UC admissions officers using the applicant's high school as a proxy for race to achieve their desired goal. Heavily Asian high schools, such as Arcadia, which is 68% Asian, saw the UC San Diego acceptance rate cut from 37% to 13%, while the 99% Hispanic Garfield High School saw its UC San Diego acceptance rate rise from 29% to 65%. The preference for diversity at the college faculty level is similarly strong. I just realized I'm wearing, out of habit, I'm wearing my earphone because I usually have a guest on the show and I'm not listening to anyone. The preference for diversity at the college faculty level is similarly strong. Jessica Nordell's End of Bias, a beginning heralded MIT's efforts to increase the gender diversity of its engineering department. When applicants came in, the dean of engineering personally reviewed everyone from a woman. If departments turned down a good candidate, they had to explain why. When this was not enough, MIT increased its gender diversity by simply offering jobs to previously rejected female candidates. While no university will admit to letting standards slip for the sake of diversity, in South Africa it's so blatant, no one has offered a serious argument why the new processes produce higher or even equivalent quality faculty as opposed to simply more diverse faculty. The extreme preference for diversity in academia today explains much of the phenomenon of professors identifying with a minor fraction of their ancestry or even making it up entirely. During COVID-19, the difficulty of in-person testing and online proctoring created a new mechanism to push diversity at the expense of competency. The gradual but systematic elimination of standardized tests as a barrier to the admission to universities and graduate schools. Today, the majority of US colleges have either stopped requiring SAT, ACT scores, no longer require them for students in the top 10% of their class, or no longer consider them. Several elite law schools, including Harvard Law School, no longer require the LSAT as of 2023. With thousands of unqualified law students heading to a bar exam that they are unlikely to pass, the National Conference of Bar Examiners is already planning to dilute the bar exam under the Next Gen plan. That's how you get a 30% pass rate in the South African education system, constantly diluting until the standards until you need 30% to pass a subject. Specifically eliminating any aspects of our exams that could contribute to performance disparities will almost definitionally reduce the degree to which the exam tests for competency. Similarly, standards used to select doctors have been weakened to promote diversity. Programs such as the City College of New York's BSMD program have eliminated the MCAT requirement. With the SAT now optional, new candidates can go straight from high school to the United States Medical Licensing Examination Step 1 exam in medical school without having gone through any rigorous standardized test whose score can be compared across schools. Step 1 scores were historically the most significant factor in the National Residency Matching Program, which pairs soon-to-be doctors with their future residency training programs. Because Step 1 scores serve a barrier to increasing diversity, they have been made pass-fail. A handful of doctors are speaking out about the dangers of picking doctors based on factors other than competency, but most either explicitly prefer diversity or else stay silent, concerned about the career ending repercussions of pointing out the obvious. When even carrot and stick incentives and removal of standards do not achieve enough diversity, the end game is to simply make decision makers comply. Make has two preferred implementations. One is widely discussed and the other is, for obvious reasons, never disclosed publicly. The first method of implementation is the application of quotas. Quotas, or set-asides, require the preservation of admission slots, jobs, contracts, board seats, or other scarce goods for women and members of favored minority groups. In South Africa, it's favored majority group. Government contracts and supply agreements are explicitly awarded to firms that have acronyms such as SBW. I'm not going to read all of those. Within the large employers and government contractors, quotas are used for both hiring and promotions, requiring specific percentages of hiring or promotions to reserve for favored groups. During the summer of 2020, the CEO of Wells Fargo was publicly shamed after his memo blaming the underrepresentation of Black senior leaders on a very limited pool of Black talent was leaked to Reuters. Less than a month later, the bank publicly pledged to reserve 12% of leadership positions for Black candidates and began tying executive compensation to reaching diversity goals. In 2022, Goldman Sachs extended quotas to the capital markets by adopting a policy to avoid underwriting IPOs of firms without at least 2 board members that are not straight white men. When diversity still refuses to rise to acceptable levels, the remaining solution is the direct exclusion of non-diverse candidates, as we see in South Africa. While public support for, and in South Africa, it's not secret, it's like explicit. While public support for anti-discrimination laws and equal opportunity laws are high, public support for affirmative action and quotas is decidedly mixed. Hardline views, such as those expressed in author Ujima Ulu's Mediocre, the Dangerous Legacy of White Male America, namely that any white man in a position of power perpetuates a system of white male domination, are still considered extreme even within US progressive circles. As such, when explicit exclusion is used to eliminate groups like white men from selection processes, it is done subtly. In South Africa, not subtly. Managers are told to sequester all the resumes from non-diverse candidates, that is, white males. These resumes are discarded and the candidates are sent emails politely telling them that other candidates were a better fit. In South Africa, you get cases where the company just says, you are not the correct race. We're only hiring these races. While some so-called reverse discrimination lawsuits have been filed, reverse discrimination doesn't exist. Reverse discrimination, it's just discrimination or not. It's just racism or not. It's not reverse racism. That doesn't exist. Most of these policies go unreported. The reasons are straightforward. Even in 2023, screening out all white men is not a de jure legal. It's not legal. De jure legal. Moreover, any member of the professional managerial class who witnesses and reports discrimination against white men will never work in their field again. Even anonymous whistleblowing is likely to be rare. To imagine why, suppose incontrovertible evidence was produced that one's employer was explicitly excluding white male candidates and a lawsuit was filed. The employer's reputation and the reputation of all the employees there, including the white men still working there, would be tarnished. That said, we would expect to see more lawsuits from we can expect to see more lawsuits from men who feel they have little to lose. This ask, tell, make framework under various descriptions is the method by which individuals with a vested interest in more diversity push their organizations towards their preferred outcome. Force begins requesting modest changes to recruiting to make it more fair. Force ends with the heavy-handed application of quotas and even exclusion. The American system is not a monolith, however, which means that the strength of the push and its effects on competency is not distributed evenly. Let's give the chat a little bit of attention before we continue. I hope you guys are finding this piece interesting. It really is one of my favorite essays. Really is one that I really find fascinating and very detailed. Let's see here. Sideline Opinion says China, the East, Russia, Japan, the Far East, and the Middle East do not play these silly games. They will therefore become the strongest world powers. Johnny Mukherjee says, good God bless Trump. Dave says, congratulations, Aaron's. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate it. Sideline Opinion says, the West is in self-destruct mode with these crazy woke social justice ideas. And then Sideline Opinions also said, hit the like button and follow if you have not done so already. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, RJ says, South Africa jumped straight to racism to make. Let's see. All right. Let's continue. I just want to see how much is left here. We've got about 15 minutes of the stream left. Yeah, no, this is we'll definitely make it within 15 minutes. Okay. Competency is declining from the core outwards. This is yeah. Think of the American system as a series of concentric rings with the government at the center. Directly surrounding that are the organizations that receive government funds, then the non-profits that influence and are subject to policy, and finally businesses at the periphery. Since the era of the Manhattan Project and the space race, the state capacity of the federal government has been declining almost monotonically. I don't know how to pronounce that one. My English second language is failing me there. Monotonic, yeah. It's actually really funny. Monotonically. Is that it? Well, this has occurred for a multitude of reasons. The steel girders supporting the competency of the federal government were the first to be exposed to the salt water of the Civil Rights Act and related executive orders. Government agencies, which are in charge of overseeing all the other systems, have seen the quality of their human capital decline tremendously since the 1960s. While the damage to an agency like the Department of Agriculture may have long-term deadly consequences, the most immediate danger is at safety-critical agencies like the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. The air traffic control ATC system used in the US relies on an intricate dance of visual or radar observation, transponders, and radio communication. All of the incredible challenge of keeping thousands of simultaneously moving planes from ever crashing into each other. Since air controlling is one of the only jobs that pays more than $100,000 per year and does not require a college diploma, it has been a popular career choice for individuals without a degree who nonetheless have an exceptionally good memory, attention span, visual spatial awareness, and logical skills. The air traffic selection and training SAT exam is a standardized test of those critical skills, was historically the primary barrier to entry for air controllers. As a consequence of the SAT, as well as preference for veterans with former air controller experience, 83% of air controllers in the US were white men as of 2014. That year, the FAA added a biographical questionnaire, BQ, to the screening process to tilt the application pool towards diverse candidates. Facing pushback in the courts from well-qualified candidates who were screened out, the FAA quietly backed away from the BQ and adopted a new exam, the Air Traffic Skills Assessment, ATSA. While the ATSA includes some questions similar to those of the BQ, it restored the test's focus on core air traffic skills. The importance of highly skilled air controllers was made clear in the most deadly air disaster in history, the 1977 Tenerife accident. The two planes, one taking off and one taxiing, collided on the runway due to confusion between the captain of KLM 4805 and the Tenerife ATC. The crash, which killed 583 people, resulted in sweeping changes in aviation safety culture. Recently, the tremendous US record for air safety established since the 1970s has been fraying at the edges. The first 3 months of 2023 saw 9 near-miss accidents in US airports, one with 2 planes coming within 100 feet of colliding. This terrifying uptick from years prior resulted in the FAA and NTSB convening safety summits in March and May, respectively. Whether they dared to discuss root causes seems unlikely. Given the sheer size of the US military in both manpower and budget dollars, it should not come as a surprise that the diversity push has also affected the readiness of this institution. Following 3 completely avoidable collisions of US Navy warships in 2017 and a fire in 2020 that resulted in the scuttling of USS Bonhomme Richard, a $750 million amphibious assault craft, two retired Marines conducted off-the-record interviews with 77 current and retired Navy officers. One recurring theme was the prioritization of diversity training over ship handling and warfighting preparedness. Many of them openly admit that, given current issues, the US would likely lose an open naval engagement with China. Instead of taking the criticism to heart, the Navy commissioned Task Force One Navy, which recommended de-emphasizing or eliminating meritocratic tests like the officer aptitude rating to boost diversity. Absent an existential challenge, US military preparedness is likely to continue to degrade. That's actually quite shocking. Firstly, the air traffic control part, and then also this part about the military being downgraded like that. Let's see. People saying, yes, I pronounced that word correctly. Thank you very much. 5th time's the charm. All right. Sideline opinion says similar circumstances led to Black Hawk chopper flying straight into a passenger carrier plane. That you're talking about that recent crash. Well, it is a very strange crash. We'll have to see what the investigation finds happened there. But I mean, reading the description here about how air traffic control has degraded, I mean, it's a very high possibility. Right. Is my sound still okay? I'm just asking, seeing as my microphone is playing around. It's not like you have to put your sound at max to hear me. Is my sound at a good level? Just let me know. The decline in the capacity of government contractors is likewise obvious, with the largest contractors being the most directly impacted. The 5 largest contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Raytheon Company, and Northrop Grumman, will all struggle to maintain competency in the coming years. Boeing, one of only 2 firms globally capable of mass producing large airliners, has a particularly striking crisis unfolding in its institutional culture. Shortly after releasing the 737 MAX 346 people, 300. I read that number like a plane name, like a plane model. 346 people died in 2 nearly identical 737 MAX crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. Cause of the crashes was a complex interaction between design choices, cost-cutting led by MBA's FAA issues, the MCA's flight control system, a faulty sensor, and pilot training. Meanwhile, on the defense side of the business, Boeing's new fuel tanker, the KC-46A Pegasus, is years behind on deliveries due to serious technical flaws with the fueling system, along with multiple cases of foreign object debris left inside the plane during construction, tools, a red plastic cap, and in one case, even trash. Between the issues at ATC and Boeing, damages to the US phenomenal aviation safety record seems almost inevitable. After government contractors, the next most affected class of institutions are non-profit organizations. They are entrapped by the government, whose policies they are subject to and trying to influence, the opinions of their donor base, and a lack of any profit motive. The lifeblood of non-profits is access to capital, either directly in the form of government grants or through donations that are deemed tax deductible. Accessing federal monies means being subject to the full weight of US diversity rules and regulations. Nonprofits are generally governed by boards whose members tend to overlap with the list of major donors. Because advocacy for diversity and board membership are both high status positions, unsurprisingly, board members tend to voice favorable opinions of diversity. Those opinions flow downstream to the organizations they oversee. People say the sound is fine. Sound is great. Klank goed. Sound is good. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the feedback. Emery says, I'm supposed to learn that there are no degree requirements for ATC positions. Here, I think you're talking about Turkey. You need a 4-year specialized ATC degree to hold such a position. Slippery Pickle says, careful what you say about Boeing. Ruandi says, lol. All right, let's continue. I just want to finish try to finish by 7 here, Central Africa time. Non-profits, including universities, charities, and foundations, exist in an overlapping ecosystem with journalism, with individuals tending to freely circulate between the four. The activities of non-profits are bound up in the same discourses shaped by current news and academic research, with all four reflecting the same general ideological consensus. Finally, lacking profit motive, the decision-making processes of non-profits are influenced by what will affect the status of the individuals within those organizations rather than what will affect profits. Within non-profits, the cost of incompetent staffers is borne by stakeholders rather than one individual. While all businesses subject to federal law must prioritize diversity over competency at some level, the problem is worse at publicly traded corporations for reasons both obvious and subtle. The obvious reason is that larger companies present larger targets for EEOC actions and discrimination lawsuits with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. Corporations have logically responded by hiring large teams of HR professionals to preempt such lawsuits. Over the past several decades, HR has evolved from simply overseeing onboarding to involvement in every aspect of hiring, promotions, and firings, seeing them all through a political and regulatory lens. The more subtle reason for pressure within the publicly traded companies is that they require ongoing relationships with a spider web of banks, credit rating agencies, proxy advisory services, and most importantly, investors. Given that the loss of access to capital is an immediate death sentence for most businesses, the CEOs of publicly traded companies tend to push diversity over competency even when the decline in firm performance is clear. CEOs would likely rather trade a small drag on profit margins than a potentially career-ending scandal from pushing back. That's very important. Why when people say go woke, go broke, do companies still go woke? This is one of the reasons, because it's about the career-ending or status damage that can be done if you are seen as not diverse enough or not woke enough. Whereas publicly traded corporations nearly uniformly push diversity, privately held businesses vary tremendously based on the views of their owners. Very tremendously based on the views of their owners. Partnerships such as the big four accounting firms and the top tier management consultancies are high status. High status firms must regularly proclaim extensive support for diversity. While the firms tend to be highly selective, partnerships whose leadership is overwhelmingly white and male have generally capitulated to the zeitgeist and are cutting standards to hit targets. Firms often manage around this by hiring for diversity and then putting diversity hires into roles where they are the least likely to damage the firm or the brand. They just put them in a broom closet and say, call it a day. Somewhat counterintuitively, firms with diverse founders are often highly meritocratic, as the structure harnesses the founder's desire to make money and shields them from criticism on diversity issues. The most notable example of a diverse meritocracy is Vista Equity Partners, the large private equity firm founded by Robert F. Smith, America's wealthiest black man. Robert F. Smith is one of the most vocal advocates for and philanthropists to historically black U.S. colleges and universities. It would be reasonable to expect Vista to prioritize diversity over competency in its portfolio companies. However, Vista has instead been profiled for giving all portfolio company management teams criteria cognitive aptitude test and ruthlessly culling low performers. Given the amount of value to be created by promoting the best people into leadership roles of their portfolio companies, one might imagine this to be low-hanging fruit for the rest of the private equity. Yet Vista is an outlier. Why Vista can apply this CCAT without a public outcry is obvious. The other firms that tend to still focus on competency are those that are small and private. Such firms have two key advantages. They fall below the 15-employee threshold for the most onerous EEOC rules, and the owner can usually directly observe the performance of everyone inside the organization. Within small firms, underperformance is usually obvious. Tech startups, being both small and private, would seem to have the right structure to prioritize competency. The American system is cracking. Let's just see, is this the last section? Yes. We are now in the conclusionary section of this essay. Let's just see the chat before I continue. Let's see here. All right, there's no questions or any comments regarding one specific part, so let's continue. The American system is cracking. Promoting diversity over competency does not simply affect new hires and promotion decisions, it also affects the people already working inside of America's systems. Morale and competency inside US organizations are declining. Those who understand that the new system makes it hard or impossible for them to advance are demoralized, affecting their performance. Even individuals poised to benefit from diversity performances notice that better people are being passed over and the average quality of their team is declining. High performance High performers want to be on a high performing team. When priorities of the organization shift away from performance, high performers respond negatively. This effect was likely seen in a recent paper by McDonald, Keyes, and Westphal. The paper points out that white male senior leaders reduce their engagement following the appointment of a minority CEO. While it is possible that the author Ujima Olu is correct and that white men have so much unconscious bias raging inside of them that the appointment of a diverse CEO sends them into a tailspin of resentment, there's another more plausible explanation. When boards choose diverse CEOs to make a political statement, high performers who see an organization shifting away from valuing honest performance respond by disengaging. Some demoralized employees, like James Damore, in his now famous essay, Google's Ideological Echo Chamber, will directly push back against pro diversity arguments. Like James, they will be fired. Older, demoralized workers, especially those who are mere years away from retirement, are unlikely to point out the decline in competency and risk it costing their lives, costing their jobs. Sorry, my brain. Uh, Maybe in the future it will cost you your life if it gets more extreme. Those who have a large enough nest egg may simply retire to avoid having to deal with the indignity of having to attend another inclusive leadership seminar. As older men with tacit knowledge either retire or are pushed out, the burden of maintaining America's complex systems will fall on the young, lower performing young men. Fall on the young. Lower performing young men are angry at the toxic mix of affirmative action hurting their chances of admission to a good school and credentialism limiting the good jobs to graduates of good schools, are turning their backs on college and white collar work altogether. This is the continuation of a trend that began over a decade ago. High performing young men will either collaborate, coast, or downshift by leaving high status employment altogether. Collaborators will embrace allyship to attempt to bolster their chances of getting promoted. Coasters realize that they need to work just slightly harder than the worst individual on their team. Their shirking is likely to go unnoticed, and they are unlikely to feel enough emotional connection to the organization to raise alarm when critical mistakes are made. The combination of new employees hired for diversity, not competence, and the declining engagement of the highly competent sets the stage for failures of increasingly frequent magnitude. And that's why I always keep saying that the true results of companies hiring people based on the color of their skin and their sex rather than their ability will only really start becoming clear and obvious when planes start colliding on the runway, trains start derailing, bridges start collapsing, all of the things we're already seeing happen. The modern US is a system of systems interacting together in intricate ways. All these complex systems are simply assumed to work. In February of 2021, cold weather in Texas caused shutdowns at unwinterized natural gas power plants. The failure rippled through the system with interlocking dependencies. As a result, 246 people died. In straightforward work, declining competency means that things happen more slowly and products are lower quality or more expensive. In complex systems, declining competency results in catastrophic failures like load shedding in South Africa, rolling blackouts. To understand why, one must understand the concept of a normal accident. In 1984, Charles Perrow, a Yale sociologist, published the book Normal Accidents: Living with High-Risk Technologies. In this book, Perrow lays out the theory of normal accidents. When you have lays out the theory of normal accidents. When you have systems that are both complex and tightly coupled, catastrophic failures are unavoidable, cannot simply be designed around. In this context, a complex system is one that has many components that all need to interact in a specified way to produce the desired outcome. Complex systems often have relationships that are nonlinear and contain feedback loops. Tightly coupled systems are those whose components need to move together precisely or in a precise sequence. The 1979 Three Mile Island accident was used as a case study. A relatively minor blockage of a water filter led to a cascading series of malfunctions that culminated in a partial meltdown. In A Demon of Our Own Design, author Richard Buxtehude added two key contributions to Perot's theory. First, that it applies to financial markets, and secondly, that regulation intended to fix the problem may actually make it worse. The biggest shortcoming of the theory is that it makes competency as a given. It takes competency as a given. The idea that competent organizations can devolve to a level where the risk of normal accidents becomes unacceptably high is barely addressed. In other words, rather than being taken as absolutes, complexity and tightness should be understood to be relative to the functionality of the people and systems that are managing them. The US has embraced a novel question. What happens when the men who built the complex systems our society relies on cease contributing and are replaced by people who were chosen for reasons other than competency? As I said earlier, then you will see the increased frequency in trains derailing, planes colliding, bridges collapsing. The answer is clear. Catastrophic normal accidents will happen with increasing regularity. Well, there you go. While each failure is officially seen as a separate issue to be fixed with small patches, the reality is that the whole system is seeing failures at an accelerating rate, which will lead in turn to the failure of other systems. In the case of the campfire that killed, why is campfire capitalized there? That threw me off a little bit. In the case of the campfire that killed 85 people, PG&E fired its CEO, filed Chapter 11, and restructured. The system's response has been to turn off the electricity and raise wildfire insurance premiums. This has resulted in very little reflection. The more recent coronavirus pandemic was another teachable moment. What started just 3 years ago with a novel respiratory virus had caused a financial crisis, soaring inflation, and now a banking crisis in rapid succession. Patching the specific failure mode is simultaneously too slow and induces unexpected consequences. Cascading failures overwhelm the capabilities of the system to react. 20 years ago, a software bug caused a poorly managed local outage that led to the blackout that knocked out power to 55 million people and caused 100 deaths. Utilities were able to restore power to all 55 million people in only 4 days. It is unclear if they could do the same today. US cities would look very different if they remained without power for even 2 weeks. Especially if other obstructions unfolded. What if emergency supplies sat on trains immobilized by fuel shortages due to the aforementioned pipeline shutdown? Preference for diversity over competency has made our system of systems dangerously fragile. That's important. The preference for diversity over competency has made our system of systems dangerously fragile. Americans living today are the inheritors of systems that created the highest standard of living in human history. Rather than protecting the competency that made those systems possible, the modern preference for diversity has attenuated. I'm being confronted by my non-perfect English vocabulary here tonight. I have to improve. Attenuated meritocratic evaluation at all levels of American society. Given the damage already done to competence and morale, combined with the natural exodus of baby boomers with decades worth of tacit knowledge, the biggest challenge of the coming decades might simply be maintaining the systems we have today. The path of least resistance will be the devolution of complex systems and the reduction in the quality of life that entails. For the typical resident in a second-tier city in Mexico, Brazil, or South Africa, power outages are not uncommon, tap water is probably not safe to drink, and hospital-associated infections are common and often fatal. Absent a step change in the quality of American governance and a renewed culture of excellence, they prefigure the country's future. South Africanization, that's what he's talking about there at the end. South Africa is just the head of the curve. All across the world, the future has already happened. It's just unevenly distributed. All right. Harold Robertson is an asset class head. and institutional investor at multi-billion-dollar pool of at a multi-billion-dollar pool of capital. You can follow him here, and it goes to his Substack. I'm just going to put it up there. There you go. Anyway, that's the end. Flight story aside. Thank you very much. That's the end of that essay. That brings me to the end of this episode as well. Thank you very much, everyone that tuned in. As I said, sorry we didn't talk about land expropriation and South Africa here tonight. I don't want to take a little break from that topic. I've been inundated with that topic for 2 weeks now, and it's going to just continue. So thanks, Trump, for giving me more work this week. I appreciate it. All right. Let's see some comments before we say goodbye. There was something else that I wanted to say, but I forgot now. I had another thought that I wanted to share on this topic. It's fine. I don't think it would have. It's not a make or break. Yeah, there's actually it's a lot of comments. I don't think I'm going to be able to read them all. The Reluctant Dragon says the people who don't see where this are going aren't smart. Sotanar says we are witnessing Atlas Shrugged in real time. Sideline Opinion says mainstream media brainwashes the masses to follow this road to self-destruction by brainwashing them. Be Smart says repeat, repeat, repeat. Dave says little fire emojis. Hendo says 67 likes. Thank you very much, Hendo. Appreciate that. The Reluctant Dragon says the campfire is a proper name in that instance. Okay, I get it. Iceman says you're doing great. I think that's in reference to my English. Thank you very much. RJ says it's all taken for granted. It can get a lot worse. That's what I always tell people. Is they like, especially Americans, they look at what's happening in South Africa and they say like, yeah, we're already at South Africa levels of dysfunction here in America. I'm like, yeah, you're not even at 1% the South African levels of dysfunction. Things can get a lot worse. Let's see. Bill Ding says, dankie vir jou werk. Dankie vir jou boodskap. Dave says, thanks, Arons. I miss Nick Plur says, thanks for reading that and congrats on the 200. Well, thank you very much. I like sharing the essays and texts that I enjoy, and then discussing it with you as I read them. The Iceman says, most Americans can't conceive of deindustrialization. Yes, and they also can't conceive of de-development. South Africa is the premier de-developing country in the world. We know de-development very intimately. I miss Nick also says, people go share that article, link in the description. Yes, there's link in the description. Go share it. It's a very good read. RJ says that was a great read. Well, thank you very much. Stefan says, dankie vir jou en AfriForum se harde werk. Thank you very much. I think I'll end it there. If you want to support my work, you don't, super chats are not on this channel, is not monetized. You can support what I do by becoming a member of AfriForum, even if you're international. You can go to the link in the description to become a member of AfriForum in the description of this video. And if you're international or living in South Africa, you can become a member of AfriForum, and I would appreciate that. Dave says this brew doesn't do super chats. No, not at the moment. I don't see the use of them at the moment. I'll do them when my chat is so busy that I can't keep up. Because at the moment I read everyone's chat, so it would feel unfair that people give a super chat, their chat gets highlighted, and I read them just the same. So I'll put on super chats when the chat starts moving so fast I can't keep up. But as I said, the money that you would have given to me as a super chat, you can go to the link in the description to support AfriForum, become a member of AfriForum, and donate there. That's a much better use of your money than giving me a super chat. Iceman says, I always learn so much from your streams. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That very big compliment. I appreciate it. Dave says, muscle. All right. That's the end of it. I hope you guys enjoyed that reading of that essay. As I said, I will be a guest on Oren McIntyre's YouTube channel tomorrow evening, 3 p.m. Eastern time, about 10 p.m. Central Africa time, to talk about the Expropriation Act, Donald Trump's tweet about South Africa, and just what's going on in South Africa. So tune into that. Come represent. Come to the chat and ask your questions. Bring your comments. Sotanar says, thanks so much for all the streams. Have a great week, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all have a great week. Cheers, guys. And also, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. There's, like I said, I love doing this, so there will be hundreds more episodes if I have my way. So Longcraft says, thank you, Normans, for raising the skill ceiling of English. All right. I think that brings us to the end. I've kept you guys long enough. Cheers.